host another webinar with Canada Soccer, and this time along with many of the top referees that we have in our program here in Canada. And they're going to be speaking about their experiences inside the bubble. I think you're going to find them both entertaining and informative. So without further ado, let's get started. Just a quick overview about the event. The event took place over about 43 days from August 8th to September 20th. The location was Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. There were 3 staff, I'll call them staff. They had a multitude of roles, but Isaac was there as the manager of refereeing. We also had Bob Sawtell, who's online with us today, wearing at least 3 hats, and I'm sure there was many more than that, as an instructor, assessor, and referee committee member. And finally, Joe Audie, who participated in the French session earlier today, who was also wearing a multitude of hats. But as we know, they're there for support. Really, the stars of the show are the referees. So online today with us, we have Carly Shaw McLaren from BC. Welcome, Carly. We have Dave Barry from Ontario, Philip Duich from Ontario, and Yusuri Rudolph also from Ontario. Unfortunately, Juan Marquez, who had an excellent tournament and ended up refereeing the final, was not able to join us today. He had to sacrifice his job. You want to talk about sacrifices? He had to step away from his job in order to commit and attend for the entire event. But fortunately, he has now has a new job. So because of that, he wasn't able to get the time off to join us today. And then Matt Soare, Miriam Marcotte, and Pierre-Luc were also there and participated online earlier today. And for the assistant referees, we had Jason Olinsky from Ontario, Michael Hood from BC, Stefan Tanaka-Freund also from BC, Sean Hornsby from Ontario, and Travis Lefebvre from Nova Scotia. And then Gabby Liez and PBQ were also in attendance to round out the total of 16 officials that attended the Island Games. Here's a picture of everybody in their navy blue finest. Yusuri, I'm going to come to you. Please, we can see in this picture here, you have quite a different look about you. And now there's, I mean, I call it the hairy caterpillar. I apologize if that offends you. I don't know how else to describe this very, very handsome look you have going on. Tell us what's going on for you.
Well, a word that comes to mind for me is spectacular, but that's—
Oh, sorry. I picked the wrong word.
No, so it's been about 10 years that I grow a mustache for Movember every year. So this is, I mean, the 10th iteration of it. And I know it's not the preferred look for Canada Soccer, but this, I'm very appreciative of the fact that they are supporting me by allowing me to be on this webinar with you guys without having to shave. For those of you who don't know, Movember is something that raises awareness for men's health issues, mental health, or prostate cancer and stuff like that. So it's something that is important to me, and it's something that I do every year. So once again, thank you very much to Canada Soccer for not shipping me a bunch of razors before the webinar started.
Had we known Yusuri, we may have booked the date for December 1st, but no problem. It's a very worthwhile cause. So, and I think, like you said, it's spectacular. So why would we get rid of it, right?
Thank you.
Excellent. So obviously, when we get into events of this magnitude, anytime when you have to leave your family, leave your work, leave your regular daily schedule, there's a lot of sacrifices that go along with that. And as referees, and we have many, many referees on the line with us today, we know that there are many sacrifices that go into operating at the highest level. And Dave, I'm going to come to you first because this is just the cutest little picture of your daughter here in her Halloween princess costume. So please tell us how hard it was for you to make the decision to go.
Yeah, so you know, obviously there's, as you say, in terms of the family sacrifices, you see a picture there of me with my daughter who's 6 years old, she's called Emily. Obviously being a referee and I've travelled extensively, you know, I'm used to being away from my daughter, but no more than normally a couple of days, maybe for an event, tournament or games. When the tournament was announced, we were not sure if summer camps would be taking place or even school would be starting back. So it was it was a tremendous sacrifice on my wife and a lot of discussions as to if I could even attend the tournament. So we looked into it, and you know, I was able to make it work about coming to the tournament. It was certainly hard to be away from the family. That part was something that, you know, from speaking to other colleagues that have been in these tournaments, that would be the hardest part, and it was. And we stayed together with FaceTime and reading stories over there. But it was certainly it was great to talk to my daughter while I was away, but it was sometimes even harder because then you would realize what you're missing or some of the things that she would say to me when we was speaking.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I can speak from personal experience. It is very difficult, right? As much as you love what you're doing and want to be there and be totally engaged, there is a part of you that's feeling like you're missing out on some of the things that happen at home. So, but I think it shows your professionalism in being able to compartmentalize and prioritize, you know, when you're on the field and you're in the event, to give the event your full attention. And then, you know, when you get back home, you're ready to be engaged back at home with your daughter. So thank you for sharing that with us, Dave. Stefan, for you as a high school teacher, obviously the start of this tournament kind of coincided with the start of back to school, and it's not a normal year of going back to school this year. So how was that for you to be able to attend?
So the biggest hurdle was we didn't know what day the games would start, which meant we didn't know what day the games would end. And we couple that with a school year where we didn't really know the start date or even how these lessons would be delivered. It all added to the stress. It was a bit like starting a new job while being away, but at the end of the day, it was a no-brainer to go.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. And then Bob, I'm just going to change slides here to you about, you know, there was a whole thing to go along with the COVID, the requirements in order to attend, the requirements of isolation, the requirements of testing. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. As the dates firmed up a little bit, we knew that we were going to go into a 14-day isolation as best we could before traveling. And that necessitated a up-the-nose COVID test, and the league facilitated that in our cases by having Pacific, the club Pacific FC, organize a nurse to come to my backyard so that Juan, Stefan, Michael, and myself could have our tests. And so we sat in deck chairs and moved up to the test table as we needed, and at the same time had a pre-tournament Zoom call with Isaac. So we actually had all our tests televised.
Multitasking at its finest, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure Mary came out and served some tea for everybody, right? Who's sitting out there in the backyard in the deck chairs.
It was really warm. Water was sufficient. All the guys were very professional. And because we had to do it in the middle of the day, that was just another call on their time and adjustments with their work schedules so that we could be there when the nurse was able to test us.
Sure. And like you mentioned, there was a mandatory 14-day isolation before you actually even left home. So the day you found out that you were appointed to go, you literally had to go into isolation that day in order to meet that 2-week requirement. So any personal plans that anybody had made, and let's be honest, we're all in physio and massage, keeping our bodies healthy, all of that had to be altered, right, in order to make sure you could meet those requirements to attend the event. So I'm sure that was not easy at all.
Everybody got into game mode.
Yeah, exactly. And Carly, talking about not easy, tell us about your travel to get to the Island Games in PEI from nice, warm, chilly, cold Prince George. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, so to limit our chance of exposure for COVID, they had organized charter flights out of the team cities, which for me, the closest one was Victoria, which meant having to drive 10 hours the day before the flight. And then at that point, I met up with the other people from BC. We took the ferry over, and then we had to sleep in our cars. We weren't allowed to stay in a hotel for that night, just to limit any chance of exposure. And then at that point, 4 a.m., we headed to the airport and went on our nice long 12-hour flight.
How many stops did you have to make, Carly, along the way? Because you started in Victoria, right? And then where did you go?
Yeah, we went to Calgary, and then Edmonton, and then Winnipeg, and then finally off to Charlottetown.
And picking up all the teams along the way, correct?
Yep.
Did they shove the referees at the back of the bus there, or were you guys interspersed in between the teams?
No, we were actually lucky enough on our flight that we were in the first class section. So we got some comments by the players on the way in. I think there was a bit of jealousy there, but with all of our travel, we were very grateful to be up there.
Great. Thanks, Carly. Now, something else that was, a factor was the changing dates of start, right? Initially, it was supposed to start at the beginning of August, then it kind of got moved a little bit later in August. And because of this, people's availability and the national program changed. And fortunately for both Jason and Michael, who are next gen referees in our program, we're going to speak about in just a sec, that allowed an opportunity for them to step into this environment that maybe they wouldn't have had so early in their careers. And we often talk in refereeing about being ready when that opportunity comes. So Jason, can you talk to us about what the next gen program is?
Yeah, the next gen program is basically the purpose is to develop the next generation of referees and assistant referees from the provincial pool across the country. We get opportunities to have physical, technical training. We also get opportunities in games to better and to get better and develop as referees. The program started in 2018. Seeing kind of how the needs to have referees for the professional games that we're going to be coming up over the next couple of seasons. So I've been a part of the program for the last 2 seasons, so it's been very good.
I think that, you know, it's excellent. It's this ability to train the next group of referees who will be operating in this environment, right? And having a professional league means that we need to have referees to service that league. So this next gen program has been this, not a fast track, definitely not. The requirements haven't changed, but maybe a specialized program that allows you exposure into the national program earlier than you would have 2 or 3 years ago. So thank you, Jason, for sharing that with us. Now, Michael, what was it like for you? I mean, clearly this is like an awesome picture, and I'm sure you landed this on your feed knowing you. But what was this experience like for you about getting the call to attend the Island Games?
Yeah, honestly, it was, I was super excited to get the appointment, and just really just excited, and I was looking forward to it. It was something I really wanted to do. Yeah.
Did you find working with these top level national referees beneficial, or was it intimidating? I mean, how did you did games last year in the CPL, right? So this wasn't your first experience, but how was this a little bit different for you?
Yeah, the games themselves were fairly similar to what it was last year. It's still the same professional game. It's fast, intense, but there was definitely differences. The lack of crowd really changed the atmosphere of it. But add in the fact that I'm now working with these top officials from all over Canada, and just being able to work with them and see what's expected of a referee at that level with training and feedback and all that. It was really just a great experience and really helped myself grow as a referee.
Yeah, I'm sure the boot camp atmosphere, right, of being immersed in it all day, every day, I'm sure really was beneficial to your development.
Yeah.
Philip, I wanted to ask you, clearly there was a lot of structure to your days, and when you're in a high stress environment like this, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of structure, but can you tell us what was the daily schedule like for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can imagine, being in a hotel with all the teams, we had to have strict protocols in order to be safe and make sure there's no COVID exposures. So we had a very strict regimented schedule. So we were put into cohorts. So the referees were their own cohort, and then each team had their own cohort as well. Now we couldn't have any overlap in terms of using any of the facilities or amenities. So if we wanted to even eat a meal or go to the pool or gym, there could be no overlap. We had one chance, and that was our slot. So as you can imagine, it was really strict. So a typical day for us would look something like this. We'd meet in the morning, 6:30 a.m. breakfast. We'd have about 45 minutes to finish. After that, we'd go to the field for an 8 a.m. training session. Approximately once a week, we'd come back from training and have a COVID test. And then right before lunch, we'd usually have a gym or pool session, although that would vary sometimes if we weren't able to get a slot for that time of day. After that, we would have lunch right at noon, and then it's back to our rooms. Almost every single person there had a job that they had to go back and work when they went to their rooms. So between noon and 5 p.m., which is when dinner was served, most people were in their rooms working. And then after dinner, we would have some sort of education session. They started off very frequently to begin the tournament, and then some dates we didn't have it as we went on. And then lastly, at night, even laundry service was segmented because you couldn't even do laundry with the teams, and there wasn't even enough for us to all do laundry at once. So we actually had to alternate referees one night, ARs another night. So it was very strict. And if you missed your slot on your schedule, that's it.
If you missed your slot, dirty underwear, that was it. Too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, for those style challenged people, having a schedule of what to wear each day was probably very nice, right? Put my blue shirt on, wash that one tonight, put the red one on tomorrow. I mean, did you enjoy the schedule or did you find it frustrating?
No, I think it was definitely enjoyable because it put some structure to your routine. Because if you were just in our room and just had nothing to look forward to all the time, you would lose your mind. It's hard enough to be in a hotel for 44 days in and of itself. If you didn't have anything to look forward to or anything to plan, it would be that much harder. So I think the routine really helped us kind of get into a rhythm of things and allowed us to do well.
Thanks, Philip. Now, Sean, you were one of those who was working full-time during this event. And I mean, this is a little setup here of your workstation, but how was that to juggle not only training, education, games, making sure you're eating at the right time and getting your underwear washed? Like, how were you able to juggle keeping your job?
Yeah, like you said, like you can see from the graph in the picture there's not a lot of time to fit in, you know, a normal 8-hour work schedule. So Bob and Joe and Isaac actually did a great job of structuring our day to help, you know, facilitate working remotely. We had early morning training, and then typically all of our education was done in the evening, so we could bounce around throughout the day between work and soccer. But certainly the tournament, like we had 35 games in 6 weeks, and so, you know, that's much different than a regular season where you have a lot more time. We had some challenges in the hotel for people like Michael, who, you know, his company's out in Vancouver. He had a 4-hour time difference. So that was a little bit of a logistical hurdle to get over. Other things, like if you were assigned an afternoon kickoff, we got our appointments a few days in advance, and we generally had to take the full day off work, you know, if you're assigned in the afternoon, because there's things like the pregame briefing and arriving before the field a couple of hours before the match. So that's, you know, another hurdle you had to come over with the employers. The hotel Wi-Fi was also challenging at times. So this, you know, this sometimes meant we had to do work, you know, like in the evenings. And in my case, you know, lack of sleep started to become an issue. And so, yeah, it was a big challenge, you know, stay sharp throughout the tournament while balancing, you know, work and soccer and staying at your peak performance and match ready every day.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's almost like you're working 2 full-time jobs, right? You have full requirements for the bubble, but you also still have the requirements and expectations from your employer. So the fact that so many of you were doing that and able to manage that, and from what I've heard, nobody else has lost their jobs based on this. So I think it's a testament to your time management, which I'm sure was a big growth for some of you, because this is not an easy environment for sure. Now, Travis, we know based on the schedule that you guys were training every day. And I suspect that, you know, you didn't do the same things every day. So when you arrived in PEI, what was the training focused on at that point?
Yeah, so when we arrived, our training sessions were pretty intense. Like myself, I hadn't had the opportunity to referee a game since the previous November. So it was roughly 9 months of getting rusty. But the training was designed in a way to get all of us up to speed quickly, whether it was concentration, basic mechanics and flag technique, or match fitness, which was a lot of endurance and speed focus. We just need to be one step ahead of the players. For ARs, we were doing things like penalty kick encroachment with recorded video. Referees were doing positioning drills. We all just needed to be on top of our game from match 1. And then as things progressed, it was a lot more team oriented. So a lot of teamwork drills, and we worked with our teams before the match. And then the training became more fine tuning as Bob, Joe, and Isaac were seeing things in the games.
Yeah, and I'm going to play a couple of videos here. I just, if you can tell us, I have no idea. It's called Apples and Pears. All I hear is people yelling, but I'm going to play it. And if you can tell us what this drill was focused on. Hear Gabby getting yelled at by Isaac.
Come on, let me hear it. Let me hear it. Apple. What, Travis? Apple.
Yeah, so this one kind of got burned into our heads, and most of us are never going to look at apples and pears the same way again, and it sort of became a running joke for all of us. So this was a concentration drill where Bob and Joe would say apple for a foul and pear for no foul. And then if the ball was in their right or left hand, it was an attacking foul or a defending foul. And then there was the teamwork aspect of working with the referee to get the decision right, but there was nothing worse than feeling Joe's disappointment if we got one wrong.
Like a father's disappointment, right? When you get
That's right.
Yeah. And then you talked a bit about concentration being really important. And I'm sure as the tournament went on, right, the mental fatigue. And then you guys have this drill here. Tell me about this one. I'll just play this video.
Whoa. We had a big drop it and we went that way.
Yeah, so this one required 2 ARs on the sides and then a referee in the middle. The referee in the middle of the circle needed to keep the ball in view as everyone threw it around the circle. If the ball hit the ground, the referee would call a foul and signal in the direction for the attacking and defending team based on who touched it last. For any player who touched the ball last a second time, they received a caution, and a third time, a red card. So you can imagine it got pretty difficult to keep track of as the drill went on.
Yeah, and having your AR so far away, I'm sure on the sideline, like in a match, they're not really that much help if you're going the wrong way, right? So
That's right.
awesome.
A lot of shouting.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Now, Dave, I can see here that PL clearly is lifting more than you. I don't know if you something you're not, maybe you should be embarrassed of. I don't know. I'm not saying, but you know, I thought this picture was quite funny. Is this kind of how it looked like in the gym?
Not quite. The picture doesn't always tell the whole truth, Michelle. I mean, you know, Pierre-Luc may be able to lift the weights, and you know, he works very hard on his fitness. But then again, some of us are just naturally born athletes, so we obviously don't need to work on the strength like some others.
Oh, so you might not be strong, but you're really fast. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Sure. We'll go with that.
Perfect. Now, Yusri, Travis talked a little bit about the training when you guys arrived in PEI and the importance of getting up to match fitness. But once the game started, I mean, clearly you weren't doing a ton of endurance and speed work because the fatigue factor would play in. How did your training on the field change in order to address the things that were happening in the games?
Well, frankly, Bob, Joe, and Isaac did a great job of kind of sussing out what they were seeing in the games and then implementing it for us in training. So they would watch the games, they would listen to us on the comm sets, and then they would go through what they felt we needed to work on, and then they would set up exercises for us to do that would reflect where our room for improvement was. So one example was movement around the penalty area for the referees. We spent a lot of time working on that and trying to get out of areas where there was a lot of players, because sometimes play wasn't as refined as it might have been if teams had a full preseason and 9 months to kind of work on their game. And we were kind of getting stuck in those areas. So we spent a lot of time working on things like that just to help us for our next appointment. Because as we know, we didn't have a week or 2 weeks from one game to the next where we can kind of go home, think about it, watch the video, and improve. We had a game in a couple of days. So we really needed to use that training time to make sure that our next appointment was the best one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important, right? As referees, we have to be able to reflect on what are the areas that we need to improve. And fortunately for you guys, you got an opportunity very quickly to make those changes, right? And so it's great that the training was able to reflect those needs so that you could improve, you know, basically in 24 hours or 48 hours, right? Now, Bob, for you, who was constantly on the field with the referees, I saw this video and I thought, oh, that's so cool. They get to go to the field with the players. But then I realized even 8 months of inactivity by the teams probably wouldn't put them quite at this level. But I'm going to play this video because I think it's quite entertaining. You and Joe out there. I see Isaac's put some music to it.
Well, I can tell you that just to let Joe off the hook, I think these were the only 3 saves that I ever made.
Yeah, I did see one of his sailing way over top of the net, right? So this is true. I did see that one.
That's right. And most of the time I spent shagging balls for all the guys when they had a couple of minutes just to relax. But Joe and I did this when everybody was stretching at the end of the session. what we did for training, obviously you need a warm up, and Isaac and a lot of the senior guys contributed to the warm-up sessions, and a big shout out to Juan Marquez, who was innovative. He kept everything fun, changed it up, but incorporated all of the necessary aspects of movement and agility that were going to be needed in the game. So everybody participated fully, obviously, and there was a good work ethic right from the start of the training sessions. Our objective, as the other guys have told you, was to refine the training so that we address all of the needs. And whilst we endeavored to keep it as light as possible, there were serious times. And as I think Travis said about Joe, looked disappointed when a drill failed. We were disappointed, but we also realized at times that we had to make the adjustment to make the officials successful in what they were trying to do. So yeah, that was our main goal, to keep the spirit up, to make sure that the training was appropriate, and make sure that the corrections that we needed to make fitted what needed to be done for the whole group.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The referees are only as good as the people around them, right? That are there to support them. And as much as you want to be a cheerleader for them all the time, there are definitely times where difficult conversations and difficult adjustments need to be made. And I think being able to balance those two in regards to you and Joe's role there was probably, you wore a lot of hats, right? You were there as their assessors, you were there as their instructors, and also creating innovative and effective training sessions on the field day in and day out. I mean, that's exhausting. Now, Bob, for you, because really the focus on the fitness with the referees is what we always talk about, but you have an interesting story about how the Island Games were for you. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, 20 years on from a stroke and 10 years on from a new hip. I've been doing a lot of walking, because this time I was hoping to be in Nepal doing Everest Base Camp, but that had taken away from the requirements for the assignment that I was given in this particular bubble. And so I started working with the guys who gave me great encouragement, and with Trevor, the physio, who came in and helped us considerably. And I started back on a running regime, which to date is still intact. And I'm very, very thankful for that aspect of the bubble as it pertained to my particular situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw you a week after you got back, and I can attest to the fact that I don't think I've seen you that agile, Bob, in like 20 years. So if one of these referees went down, Isaac just had to make the call. You could have stepped into the games.
I had my shirt tailored. I had the shorts taken in. I mean, I was there.
Amazing. Thanks, Bob. Now, obviously, performance on the field is the most important, right? And as referees, what we do on the field sets the tone for the entire game. And the important thing is that the games go well and we perform and give the game what it needs. But in order to be accurate on the field, we put a lot of time in learning about concepts, making sure we can analyze clips in order to get the correct decision making. So Yusri, what did the education sessions look like in this environment?
Well, first, Michelle, I'd like to point out that the education started well before going to the Island Games. Once the season got delayed, we started having education sessions that were put on by Canada Soccer, probably starting back in April, going every other week. And they'd be Zoom webinars just like this. And we went over all sorts of different concepts. And we even had to do a laws of the game one, because the Island Games are going to be using next year's laws, the 2020-2021 laws that we hadn't used yet. So we had to get a presentation on that to make sure that we knew what we were going to be doing when we got to PEI. Once we arrived, the education, as you can see in the first picture, was done mostly by Bob and Joe. And we were going every night to make sure that we were ready for those games. And once the game started, it was mostly led by us, the referee crews. And we would do our self-analysis after a game, and we would pick out themes and trends or just plays in general that we felt had educational value. And the whole point was to go in front of the classroom and talk about what we did right and what we could improve on. And we put ourselves up there because it's not about trying to be right in the classroom, it's about trying to be right on the field. And if we put ourselves in a vulnerable situation in front of our colleagues, as much as sometimes we might want to shy away from it, it helps us improve because it makes us think about it, and we can have that open and honest conversation. And you hear different people's opinions, and they might not be what you did, or they might not be something that you can do, but just hearing it makes you think, oh, maybe there's another way of handling this situation. And the whole point of that was that for our next game in a couple of days, we have more information and more tools to be able to respond appropriately.
I can imagine though that must have been difficult. That idea of putting yourself out there in a with a clip potentially in a game that you're not really happy with how it went, and having to take feedback, both positive and negative, from your colleagues.
Well, it's never easy. No one wants to go in front of a group of people, especially ones that you're with for 6 weeks, and especially ones that we're almost in competition with one another to get the next game, right? You don't want to go out there and show a clip of something I didn't do well. The problem is that's the only way you're going to get better. If I can't take that honest feedback from my colleagues, then there's really no chance I'm taking the feedback from the assessor. Because if I can't even listen to my friend, then I'm not going to be able to listen to someone who's kind of my superior. Then
I'm still your friend, usually.
And I can imagine.
I'm still waiting for my assessment. So yeah, I'm trying to be as nice as I can.
I can imagine though that the environment that was created by you guys, in addition to the staff, allowed those conversations to happen, you know, in a safe way, right? And creating an environment where people felt like it was okay to trip and stumble and they're going to be picked back up really creates a nice environment. And let's be honest, sometimes it's the things that you do outside of soccer that really create that atmosphere that makes everybody feel welcome and you know, the ability to de-stress. So Dave, I'm going to come to you because I think you had a major role in the unwinding of the referees, probably in the winding them up also, but in the unwinding. So tell us what you did there, Mr. Cruise Ship Director here.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So a few of us more experienced referees, myself, Yusa, and Pierre-Luc, we kind of come together and formed, a social committee. So the idea behind that was all games that were played in the island games we had on in the big screen in our room. So we wanted to watch them together so we could support our fellow referees. Because the games are coming thick and fast, we always wanted to make sure we were aware of any tactics or things that we need to be aware of moving forward. The main aim of what we did was to, try to keep things light and relieve boredom, have fun, but we still want to hold the officials accountable. So what we did is we organised things like the soccer tennis, but for the on-field stuff and off-field, we also had a fine system in place. So a lot of referees are familiar with this. If you get hit by the ball, if you have incorrect equipment, or you drop your flag. We had to start making new categories. For example, one female official that will remain nameless, but isn't on this webinar. And she's from
two
Quebec.
options. That leaves us with two options because there's only 3 girls.
Yeah, but this one is from Quebec and she's a referee. But
okay.
I won't say that. She actually dropped her vanishing spray in the toilet and retrieved it.
And used it in the game?
Sorry?
And used it in the game?
We believe so.
Okay.
We believe so. But, not taking care of the equipment you've been provided was worth a fine. So as we come over the tournament, if referees were willing to do certain forfeits, they could remove points from their fines. For example, doing karaoke would get your fine reduced. So it was very much a case of just keeping it light, really, entertaining and keeping ourselves amused while we're at the tournament off the field.
So just to set up the next question I'm about to ask, did Philip have the most fines? Like, was there something about Philip that makes this next video quite relevant?
Yeah, it would appear. I mean, we're a competitive bunch with the refereeing, and I'm a fair democratic person, and it just so happened that Philip had enough fines, so we came to the agreement that for Philip to halve his fines if he would do a song in front of everyone.
Well, and lucky for Philip, somebody videoed it, so we actually have it. And there's 2 things. Look, poor Phil's already red. He's so embarrassed. There's 2 things I want to highlight before we play this video. And one is notice the body language of the other referees sitting around the table. They look more uncomfortable than Philip. And the second part is I actually don't think Philip has to read the lyrics. Like, I'm pretty sure that this song is memorized by him. So Philip, I'm going to play this, then I'm going to let you defend yourself. Okay. I even like the slow clap from the other people, like trying to get you off the stage. But Phil, please explain. Our ears are all bleeding. We'd love to hear.
Yes, well, so you see the social committee, bless them, they graciously offered a challenge to the other competitors and said, hey, if you guys all get up there and sing a song, all of your points will go to Philip. So that is what happened. And everybody transferred their points to me, hence me going from the bottom to the top. So now I had to redeem myself. Dave, being the exceptionally nice guy that he is, said, Phil, you can have your points if you go ahead and perform. But there was a panel that was going to rate me. So I couldn't mail it in. It had to be Grammy worthy, obviously. So I went up there, I did what I had to do, and the panel decided to half my points. So it doesn't get any better watching it, but I did what I had to do.
Well, the two funny things you said was redeem yourself, which I'm not totally sure based on what I heard, and Grammy worthy for sure. No way. But anyways, thanks, Philip, and thanks for being such a good sport. Now, Michael, one of the other things you did, I think you guys played a lot of soccer tennis. So here's a video of you, if you can speak about this and how this kind of played out in the event.
Yeah, so the soccer tennis really just started out as a way for us to unwind a little bit after training, because every morning we're out there on the field, so it's nice to be able to get out there and just have some fun. And obviously some of us are a little more competitive than others. So we organized a tournament, which I was lucky enough to win. I may have got some slightly unfair help from the rest of my colleagues because they didn't want the other team to win. But in the end, it all worked out great, and it was a ton of fun.
Awesome. One of the other things I think that in addition to the island games, it seems like there was something called Uno Island that was going on. And I kind of chuckled when I saw a video of you guys playing Uno, and I thought, oh my gosh, they picked such an easy game that anybody can play. I will attest to the fact I played this last night with my 7-year-olds and I lost with 26 cards still in my hand. So while I think Uno was a simple game, clearly it played a large central role in the event that you guys had inside the bubble. So Bob, did you want to talk? I'm just going to play this video here.
Sure.
And tell us about Uno Island.
Well, as you can see, it was fairly competitive. We did have a few people that didn't take winning losing very well.
Liaz, for sure, I'm sure. Liaz was one of them, the one who storms off in the video, right?
There you go. I had the pleasure of giving him 4 cards at that point. But we were different size groups, but when there was a spare minute in the room, then a group would sit down. They would jockey for positions in order to make sure that they didn't want to sit next to the person that was going to give them a bum card. And every emotion was shown during this. I think there's still a few scores to be settled. I think when we get back together again, the Uno is going to come out, and I can tell you the addition of the switch hand card is something it causes a lot of displeasure amongst some of the players.
Yeah, and I'm sure the competitiveness comes out in that environment. It doesn't matter what you guys are doing, right? No, that's awesome. Being away from home so long obviously makes it difficult when things are going well, and makes it even more difficult when things are not going well. And I think support of your family, both family inside the bubble and family outside the bubble, becomes really important. So Jason, how did that play out for you, and how were you able to kind of maintain those connections?
For sure, it was super tough to be away from your family and friends. Some people are they have partners, children, caregivers for loved ones. So you have to be able to find a balance between managing expectations with the tournament, with work, and then also finding the time in the evenings or whenever you can to decompress and kind of talk about your day and kind of take a step back and kind of rebalance yourself in the world's up, so to speak. And it really, it's tough sometimes. Like sometimes you have ups and downs with games, but your family sometimes can tell you, hey, like you need to put things in perspective, and there's always the next game and there's always the next opportunity to excel. So family's very important.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you're in this environment, right, it's like everything is so important and everything becomes so critical. And sometimes getting that phone call from outside helps put things, like you said, back in perspective, right, back into balance, and you're able to see the bigger picture. Travis, for you, how important was it to have the support of the referees that were in that environment with you?
Well, yeah, there's no denying that all of us were confined to the hotel, and if you needed somebody to talk to, you didn't have to go very far. But for most of us, national camp is the one time a year that we all get together in the same room and we see one another. And if we're fortunate enough to be appointed to a game during the regular season, we really don't get to see each other since we're all spread all over Canada. So there's plenty of downtime on the patio, the hot tub, the pool to get to know each other pretty well if we didn't already. And I think all of us would be lying if we said that there was no tough days or any games that we needed to talk about. So who better than the referee family that was there and present? A lot of us were working during the Island Games, and 2020 sort of became the year of Zoom meetings. So some of those Zoom meetings would often bleed into meal times, and we'd have to look out for each other and make sure that there was food saved and available. But yeah, we really looked out for each other like we were family.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, you kind of hit on it when you said about Canada and the size of our country. We're different than other countries where there's a centralized location. We are spread across this huge country, and having the ability to connect with and work with on a regular basis our other nationalist officials, I think, is really going to be a benefit to the program moving forward. But I'm sure that we could say this was quite the dysfunctional family sometimes. But I think that you all find a way to make it work. And that was something that was highlighted many times when I was talking to you guys about how important the relationships were with each of you in order to be able to manage the stress of this environment. One of the things that often helps with stress is being able to get out of the hotel. And we know when you're in this bubble environment, that doesn't happen very easily or very often. So Carly, how were you guys able to kind of get away?
Yeah, definitely. So going into the bubble, none of us really knew like what the expectations were, whether we're going to have to be like in our room during our free time. So we really had no expectation of even being able to leave. We were just expected to go from the hotel to training, and that was going to be our one outing a day pretty much, other than going to games. But luckily, after 3 or 4 weeks, we were allowed to leave twice. We were able to go to the beach. That was quite remote. We didn't see anyone there. We had like a kilometer of beach just to ourselves. And that was something like, I think really important for all of us to kind of take a step back, go back slightly into the real world just for a few hours, go swimming in the Atlantic. And then we also got to go on a hike at a remote location where we didn't see anyone either, but just seeing something else other than the hotel and the field was really important to all of us after such a long time, and kind of de-stressing a bit.
Well, and I see that Isaac provided you guys with beach socks, so that was nice of him, because I'm sure those socks got used for nothing else.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Sean, how about local support? You guys had some support from within the environment, right? With Bob and Joe and Isaac, and I know you had massage therapists and physio, but how was it important to have people outside that environment who could help?
Yeah, it was really important, and it certainly contributed, I think, to the success of the group. We were away for 6 weeks, and if you think about 6 weeks at home, like you do groceries, you have to go to the pharmacy, maybe you have to get stuff for work. And we didn't have that luxury being, confined to the hotel bubble. So, there were cases where we needed to supplement hotel food with like fruits, vegetables, snacks, things like that. People needed shaving cream, toothpaste, So I think our very first delivery, which was maybe a surprise / emergency, actually came from Joe Guest, who's the Deputy General Secretary for Canada Soccer. He had caught wind of our, I guess, our need to have extra nourishment. And that's just a great example of the support that we've received, throughout the tournament from, various parts of the country. But specifically to Charlottetown locally, and for the entire tournament, we had the support of two fantastic local Charlottetown people, Jim Chandler, who's the referee coordinator for PEI Soccer, and also Ian Fradsham, who is a provincial instructor and assessor. These guys bent over backwards for us. They would do grocery runs at all hours of the day. They would go to the pharmacy if someone ran out of shaving cream and had a game later that day. I remember Jim dropping off groceries anywhere between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m., whatever day of the week. And so this definitely contributed to the success of the refereeing team at the Island Games.
And was Jim your tailor? Was he the guy who was sewing the uniforms to make sure they work? Was that Jim or was that Ian?
I don't know. We just know that the work got done. So I'm not going to point fingers.
Yeah. And I mean, that speaks to refereeing around the world, right? It really is a family. And this is one of the great experiences of refereeing, is that whether you are in it for 20 years or 5 years or 50 years, the relationships and the friendships that you make really do transcend all aspects of life. And, those are two great guys, like you said, out in PEI that were there for you. And thank you to both of you guys for taking care of this rowdy bunch of dysfunctional family of referees. Now, just on to food. Now, obviously, the hotel provided great food for you, but as with anything, 120 meals over the course of, being there for 40 days, I'm sure sometimes it got a little bit, monotonous. So Stefan, what were some of the things that you guys did to counterbalance that?
Right. So I wanted to start off by saying the hotel did a great job to keep us fed. We didn't have to worry about when and where to eat. It was kind of like being back at home with mom, except mom would always ask me what I want. And I think Philip ate broccoli for the first time ever. And it was relatively healthy because we have to referee and train every single day. But that being said, there's only so much quinoa I can eat. A couple things we did to break the routine. We ordered food from local restaurants. So we had Thai food one day, Atlantic lobster, because when you're out there, it's what you got to eat. And the hotel was nice enough to organize a couple barbecues for us. And because of the COVID restrictions, we had to do that ourselves. And it was really rewarding for me to be able to cook for everybody. So yeah, and it broke the monotony, and I think it boosted morale at the same time.
So I see that this video here is like a sniper in the trees who catches Miriam and Isaac going for pizza. So was that in response to your barbecue after they realized they couldn't eat anything you made, or was that a different day?
I'm gonna go with that was a different day. I think that was just the food portions were a little low, and we needed extra food. If my barbecuing was bad, everybody was really nice and they kept those comments to themselves.
At that point, they were happy to have anything different, right, Stefan?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Now, obviously, we need to talk about the games, right? Because, we've spent an hour talking about all of the stuff except the games, but you guys really were there to referee. So usually you're one of the most experienced nationalist referees that we have that was there in the country, in addition to being there at the event. How did you find this environment in terms of the games?
Well, so funny enough, we've all seen some tournaments that have started that have restarted since the pandemic shut everything down. And we've all seen some kind of subdued games where the atmosphere might have been having an effect on the players and the intensity. And we didn't find that to be the case here at the CPL Island Games whatsoever. Starting off with the first game between Cavalry and Fords that I officiated, it was very high intensity. It was a very well played match, and at no point did we find that the games started to drop a bit. And it was a testament to the teams and the event that even on the final day of the first round, every game meant something. So every game was important. And no, it was a different experience not having fans around in a professional game. When we would rewatch some games, you would kind of hear things that you didn't quite appreciate in the heat of the moment that was going to be audible to the rest of the world. And we did have to adjust some of our communication techniques to make sure that not everything was being picked up by the microphones.
So I just want to stop you there, because that was something I think that maybe you weren't expecting or prepared for, right? The fact that the microphones that were around the field didn't have any of the background noise from fans, which meant that any discussions, even that the fourth officials had with coaches, that the referees had on the field. So was that something that you guys addressed?
So I think like we expected it going in. We kind of knew there's not going to be any fans. You're going to hear a lot more.
Yeah.
But we didn't expect the extent that you would be able to hear things. So we just thought, as long as I'm having a quiet word with a player, it should be fine. But when you're in the heat of the moment and you're saying things, or you're communicating with an assistant referee or a fourth official is trying to give you advice about, how many fouls a certain player's committed and almost maybe what actions you should be taking on the next foul, we didn't realize that all of that would get picked up as well. And that was something that we had to change on the fly to make sure that we weren't telling the audience what was going to happen next in the match.
Yeah, it's almost like refereeing with a microphone in your hand, right?
Yeah, and like NFL referees, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Stefan, for you, you're a very experienced assistant referee in the national program, and had a game on the final. You were on the final last year for the CPL and also this year. How did you find this experience?
So like Yusri said, I thought the intensity of the matches was high, the quality of play was high, and the parity was even better than last season. The biggest challenge for me, and I think all the assistant referees, was just the sheer number of games and the lack of rest days in between, because we had 2, sometimes even 3 matches per match week on the field, on top of a few reserve assistant referee appointments as well, which was all new to us.
Did you find the speed of the games different, like in terms of the way you were having to judge offside or follow the play? Like, how was it on the line in terms of play caliber?
It started off quite well, but as the teams got fatigued as well, I noticed it did slow down a bit. So towards after maybe game 15 all the way through 35, it was a bit slower.
Yeah, and you kind of have to help the referee with dealing with injury management and all those kinds of factors, right? That start to come into
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Philip, for you, you're one of our newer national list referees. And although you had a couple of games last year, this was kind of a great environment for you to get to work with some of these big, and I say big, and then I put up a picture of PL, who's our shortest, experienced, maybe is a better word, experienced senior national list referees. What was this like for you, and how were your expectations going in, and how did that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to preface that, even getting selected to go, just think about all the people that wanted to go or wish they could have gone if it wasn't for some kind of other circumstances. So just being selected to go in and of itself, tremendous honor. And I was very grateful for that. In terms of the tournament itself, I mean, personally, I always have high expectations for myself. And I think the experience that I had there, it went above that. I was fortunate enough to be one of the 6 officials selected to stay for the finals. I did a pretty big game, which decided who was going to play in the finals as well. So for myself and my career, that was a momentous experience. And then in addition to that, I got to spend 44 days with the leaders of our program and some really, really great experienced officials such as Yusri, Dave, Juan, Pierre-Luc. It was really, really big. So spending that time there, it was 6 weeks, but it was more than a season's worth of knowledge and experience. And it was truly amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And from all that I've heard, it went really well. So congratulations to you for stepping up into that environment.
Thank you.
Now, Sean, Stefan touched a little bit about the load, but in terms of an assistant referee, not that you guys are the forgotten ones, but often we spend a lot of time talking about referees, but the ARs, you guys had a lot of work as compared to the referees, right? The referees generally would have 1 game a week and maybe a 4th official. What was the recovery, being able to perform, every couple of days like, and why did you have so many games?
Yeah, so the load on assistant referees was, high at this tournament, which we knew going in. Like Stefan said, all the games at this tournament had a reserve assistant referee appointed. And so this meant that out of the 8 ARs that were there were 3 ARs assigned to every game. And so the role of the fifth official, it's kind of similar to the fourth. You're there to replace one of the assistant referees in the event that they would get injured during the match. We also take notes during the game. And so you have to be mentally focused and tuned in for the full 90 minutes. Like, you're part of the crew for that whole game. And we sat behind the fourth official table for the duration of the game. And, you know, doing things like helping with pregame and postgame administrative things like game reports. And so on top of having reserve AR appointments, unfortunately, we had one of the ARs get injured early on in the tournament. And so, you know, the extra load had to get picked up by the other 7 of us. And this often meant that you were doing at least 2 games a week on the line. We all had a couple of times doing 3 games a week, but plus doing reserve AR games, you know, on top of that. So there's the obvious aspect of being, you know, tired physically, but there's a huge mental aspect that goes into preparation, the focus during 90 minutes, and then resetting again after for the next game. So for me, the mental aspect was huge. In terms of physically, we had great support from our fitness coach, from Kevin, who sort of helped, you know, tailor trainings and sort of helped advise, I guess, Isaac, Bob, and Joe on like how we were all doing physically. And I don't think I have ever done as many recovery sessions in like 4 months as I probably did in 6 weeks of this tournament.
There's no training. It's just recovery, right? That you recover for the next game. You do
Yeah.
like match day -1, match day +1. So you
That's
prep,
right. Yeah.
and then you recover. Yeah. No, and thank you for sharing that. And that's something that we often forget about, right? Is the ability not only physically for your body to do it, but for your mind to be able to be switching on and off, and then juggling a full-time job, right? It's not like you went back to the hotel and took a nap, or, you know, sat in the hot tub, because it probably wasn't in the schedule for your time, and then you had to work, right? So that, of course, added a level of difficulty to the whole thing. Now, Bob, one of the other things that was going on with this game was this movement of Black Lives Matter. And we saw when the referees entered the field for each game, they were wearing the shirts. And can you speak to us about the significance of this?
Yeah, well, the Black Lives Matter movement was gaining momentum as we went into the games, and it was a players' initiative of what they wanted to do to show their solidarity. They had the examples of other professional sports who were doing similar things. So as the tournament started, they came up with their initiative. The league supported it, and then we facilitated it within the confines of the game. As you can see, the Black Lives Matter t-shirts were given out before the first game. And through the first 16 games, they were worn mostly. There were a couple of times when teams didn't come out wearing them. There were times when they would march out and go to the center circle and do pre-game recognition of Black Lives Matter. And there were times when they would line up in a traditional straight line and before the game for the national anthems. This put not a pressure, but it put an extra duty on the officiating crew. First of all, it worked with their own sensibilities and what they saw as their relevance to the movement. And I think that the officials were a unifying factor in just making sure that what the players wanted to achieve, we facilitated by having them move around the center circle in a position that would allow them to reflect on what was happening in society. Once we got to game 17, the initial movement was kicked off by the George Floyd murder, which had certain things to it, which usually we'll refer to. But the significance of game 16 was when Jacob Blake was shot, and all the riots were happening in Kenosha, and this put an added emphasis on the players and they really wanted to do something on a more formal basis, and it got a lot tighter in the way that they wanted to act. So the center picture that you see there for game 17, which Miriam Marcotte was the referee for, all of the players who weren't involved in the game, all of the non-working officials attended the match, and this was the first time when they knelt after the initial whistle had been blown for a minute, and that went on until game 35. But I'll let you three talk about game 17 specifically.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, halfway through this tournament at game 17, there became this desire to have almost like a signature game, right, of acknowledgement for this event. Now, Travis and Yusri, both of you guys were appointed to this game. Yusri, you were the fourth official, and Travis, you were AR number 2. But Travis, I'm going to ask you first, as an assistant working in this event and now having this added pressure of this game, what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was a humbling experience to be a part of, and this was just a game that required a different pregame routine for all of us. So for me, from a game perspective, knowing that there was going to be a wall of players behind me was sort of a big challenge. And we've all dealt with fans before, and they often turn into a blur of noise. So mentally, I knew that this would be a bit different for 9 minutes of the game. So really, the strategy was for taking one decision at a time, and to pretty much just keep it as simple as possible and just block out that there was people behind me. It's a lot easier said than done when you have the feeling of over 100 people breathing down your neck as you're running down the line. And there's always that thought of, somebody could stick their leg out and you could fall. But I mean, for the other referees, there was other things to think about, like for Lies on the other line. He had to prepare for looking into a sea of Black Lives Matter t-shirts. And then you have to remember that all the CPL away kits were black as well. So the game provided different challenges for everybody.
Yeah. And Yusri, for you as the fourth official on this game, obviously you have an added layer of responsibility to make sure that everything runs smoothly and everything gets dealt with in the right tone, right? And how did you find this game for yourself?
Well, early on, it was quite a challenge because you were trying to speak to as many players and team officials as possible to get the message across to them. Even though it was their initiative, we also know that in the middle of a game, not everyone's thinking about what they agreed upon the day before.
Sure.
So it was just kind of explaining to everyone that, remember, at 8:46, we're stopping the game, whether you're on a breakaway or whether you're about to take a penalty kick. It doesn't matter. We're stopping the game. We're taking a knee for a minute. And
so can I play this clip before, and then you can speak to how it actually played out in this game?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, here you go.
And to continue to do so for 20 more seconds when Miriam Marcotte will blow the whistle. And the players will.
So what was the significance of 8:46?
Once more.
So 8:46 is the amount of time that the police officers in Minneapolis knelt on George Floyd's neck.
It was very critical, right, that the game gets stopped at that point?
It wasn't 8:45, it wasn't 8:47, it had to be 8:46. You can see here that normally we don't stop the clock for things, but because of how powerful of an image that would be, we want to make sure that, well, not us, but the CPL and everyone who's organizing it want to make sure that the clock was stopped at 8:46 because that was the visual that we wanted. But to make it work, everyone had to be kneeling for it. And as you can see in this clip, a couple of players kind of forgot that this time was approaching. I kind of treated it as, kind of when we're approaching the end of a half or the end of a match where I'm reminding the referee, okay, we got 1 minute, we got 30 seconds, we got 15 seconds. Let's try to find something to stop play with. And sure enough, by the time play stopped, it was right at 8:46, and trying to get everyone to kneel when some players weren't happy about the events that caused play to stop was a bit of a challenge for Miriam, but she handled it well. She dragged the player to his knees, and it's an experience she will probably never forget.
Yeah, I'll just play that part again. They're quite upset about the decision to stop the game in this moment, right? And you can see Miriam really battling to calm them down and get them to stop chirping at each other, right? Because from what I understand, they were actually still bickering back and forth at each other, and she's telling them, stop, remember why we're doing this.
So I think it was just some players were kind of stopping to play and one player was still hustling because, like I said earlier, the intensity in all the matches was quite high. So this player didn't quite realize that everyone around him was taking it easy now, and he was still trying to go in from challenge to challenge, and that's when not everyone was too appreciative of his hard work at that moment.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess one way to calm a game down is to ask all the players to kneel, right? On the next foul, just everybody take a knee and see if we can manage the emotions of it. I hear you tried that user in the next game. Did it work for you?
Yeah, I tried that in my next match and didn't quite have the same effect. So I had to get up quite quickly and run to go catch up with play.
Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, you guys, all of you who are on the game and all of you who are part of this, I can tell you that the way that you guys conducted yourself and managed not only in this game, but every game that had this level of expectation of honoring this movement, you guys did us very proud. So congratulations on your handling of this very difficult situation. Now, on a different note, Carly, you also had a very difficult situation, and you had your very first CPL match in the middle. Now, you had done some fourth officials last year, but this was your very first middle. And as a brand new nationalist referee, tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so similar to everyone else, I hadn't refereed since February, just before the pandemic started. So going into my first game, this was definitely compounded by the fact that I hadn't refereed, and now I'm going to be refereeing my first professional game. But also something super unique about the bubble that I wouldn't have got to experience otherwise is just the support of having everyone around me, not only my crew, but getting to like celebrate this moment with everyone in the bubble, and then all the support leading up to it. Because if it was a regular season, would have just went to the field, maybe had something to eat after, and that would have been that. But I was lucky enough to get to share this moment with everyone.
And how did it go? How did the game go? Tell us.
I went very well. I had a great crew to support me to definitely calm down my nerves before, but I was lucky enough that both teams came out to play. It was the first week. While it was intense, no bad blood had been caused yet, so it went well.
And then tell us what's happening in this video here. I see you're getting a jersey presented to you.
Yeah, so at that time, that was after the game, FC Edmonton had organized a signed jersey for me just to kind of honor that my first game in the league. Just kind of shows their level of professionalism and how they understand like the development that Canada Soccer is doing with the referees, and with lots of younger people coming into the league. They really accept that and wanted to recognize me.
Well, and I think that's so cool. Like, I mean, it speaks to the environment that you guys had there, right? That you were all in it together, and successes by referees were also welcomed and identified by the teams. And I think that speaks a lot to the league and the atmosphere that the CPL has created. I also see here Bob presenting you with your very own referee warm-up shirt with everybody's name on it, which I'm sure you will cherish and hang on your wall, you know, with a big frame, like right in your entryway, right?
Michelle, can I just jump in?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, Yusri, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention that I was the fourth official on that match, and the level of support that, I mean, she had from both teams and even both sets of team officials. And especially you can see Jeff Paulus, who's the FC Edmonton coach at the time, presenting her with that shirt. He spoke to me before the game and during the game and even after the game, and he was almost honored to have been part of Carly's first game. And it was quite special to see someone who wasn't just thinking about the 3 points that were on the line for his team, but he was thinking about the game of soccer in this country and how we're going to get better as a soccer culture and as a soccer industry. And it was very nice to see that from him.
And I love that, Yusri. Thank you for sharing that. I think that that's a really important thing to point out. And as an ex-female referee, having opportunities for female referees in our country where they're accepted by professional players in a professional atmosphere. I mean, you know, not that Carly is a female referee, she's a referee, but, you know, with that comes extra layers of responsibility, right, Carly? You understand that you represent all of the females behind you. And the fact that the league welcomes you with open arms really speaks to this atmosphere that we've created where there's opportunities for everybody. So Carly, congratulations on that. And I know you had a couple of games after that, so obviously it went well, right? Because that was one of
thank you.
So well done. Now, obviously, with all these games comes fitness, injuries, fatigue, exhaustion. And Dave, I'm going to ask you first, as the oldest guy in the list of referees at this event. How did you find, after not having games for so long, how did you find this this atmosphere?
Thanks, Michelle. And just to preference that, we still have Silviu Petrescu on the list, who is.
Yeah, but he wasn't at the event. He wasn't at the event, so you get the oldest.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So going into the tournament, I felt great going into the tournament. You know, Canada Soccer had made a key and a huge investment on the referee program this year by bringing in a fitness coach, Kevin Wildfrong from Kelowna, BC. So he's been pivotal in improving the level of fitness, you know, across the program, and especially for the officials at this event. It's critical as I get older, the work away from the fields, and the daily workouts that we get sent to make sure that during the 90 minutes when we're doing the game, we're at our best, and mental and physical fatigue doesn't come into it. So, you know, I'm the oldest person on the field in the tournament. There certainly wasn't a player who was nearly 40 years old, so it was a big part of that. Prior to the tournament, about 4 weeks out from the tournament, when going for a run, and as older people on the webinar will understand, things just pull by themselves. It seems I actually tweaked the calf muscle. So the first thing I did was really, you know, work with Kevin and my own physio about how to get back on the field. It's not an injury I could rush, but also something that was key was communicating with Isaac about how I felt, managing my workload during the training sessions, getting appropriate rest, and being honest with myself, but also being honest with, you know, Isaac, that if I was able to do games on at this tournament, it wasn't a tournament we could just fly in, you know, another national official to enter the bubble per se. So, you know, it's been, for me, I think it's, you know, one of the biggest changes that's happened to the Canada Soccer program over recent years is the investment that we've been able to have on the fitness side. And I think that'll go a long way to improving the quality we'll see going forward.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the honesty, right, of being honest about where you're at in that recovery process, and the fact that Canada Soccer had confidence in you, right, that handled properly, you would, not in your refereeing ability, Dave, just in your ability to get back on the field and be able to run. The rest is not up to me. I mean, but the confidence they had in you to know that you would manage the injury appropriately, and that bringing you into the event, even with a little tweak in your calf, that over time it would work itself out, that you could be, you know, a reliable member of the group.
And let me just preference that prior to me even doing my first middle, I didn't even do a fourth official, because the concern was if a referee was to get injured during the game, and then I come in and then get injured because I wasn't ready, there'd be an even bigger issue. So the refereeing crew at this tournament had to do more work in the early week because I wasn't even able to do a fourth official.
Well, you were too busy counting points that they owed you for, like, fines for, you know, dropping spray bottles in toilets and stuff. So you were obviously very busy. You just weren't helping with the load of games. Musari, how about for you with the mental fatigue? How did that play in?
Well, I mean, it's a big factor. We're there for that long of a time. It's almost like, you know, an episode of Big Brother or something, where we're all just kind of in the same building. We can't leave. We're constantly under the pressure of being part of this environment. And you know what? We all appreciate that we're going to have good days and bad days. And there's some times where I might wake up in the morning and I'm not feeling the best version of myself. And as a group, we were very good at recognizing that and giving people space when they needed space, but not letting it last too long, because we know that if one person starts to kind of spiral, then it really affects the mood of the group. So we were very good at finding ways to kind of let someone have some space and then let's pick them back up again, right? And I thought it worked quite well for us. I mean, I'm sure everyone came in with their own individual techniques, but as a group, I thought we did a good job of making sure that we were able to kind of vent and just have a bad moment, but without having it affect the 40 days that we were going to be sequestered together.
Well, I'm sure everybody, all the other panelists would agree with me. You're currently in your best version of yourself right now anyway. So if you had a bad day there, it's only gone uphill since that point. Philip, for you, actually, Dave, I'm going to ask you first because I have this video here and I want to play it. What is this thing that Pierre-Luc is doing here?
These are called the Assessors test, and I forget what they're actually called. And the reason it is for is basically we have the 4 panels there. The light, just the shine lights up. The one that's different we have to touch, and it's all about our reaction time and our ability and our peripheral vision. And this is huge as we're going into games. And you know, certainly you notice a difference as the tournament went on and the big decisions about how many we got right as a referee and crew. And a lot of it was down to our preparation prior to the game and using resources like this.
So did you get better at this throughout the tournament? Because I heard you weren't very good.
No, I was terrible. But I still think it was a key part of me, doing something different as part of my preparation, just to keep things fresh at this tournament.
Sure, awesome. And Phil, for you, you didn't have an injury, like you didn't get injured in the game, although there were people who did struggle with injuries. But how was that pressure on the body and fatigue? How did that play out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely it definitely adds to the challenging aspect of the whole being trapped in a hotel thing. While I wasn't injured in one of my games, I did experience cramping, and it was very frustrating because I've never had any cramps in my life. And then after the fact, I kind of realized that it was the big part of that was I was in the hotel like 7-8 days before I did a game, wasn't eating any fruits or vegetables, kind of being pretty closed-minded with my diet. So young, think I can do whatever I want. The body said, nope. And, started to shut down a little bit, but I got through it and, just had to improve the diet a little bit. But I think that's a good lesson on preparation, and eat your broccoli, kids.
Well, I've heard you've grown a garden in your backyard, right? With lettuce and broccoli to help with all your cramping issues.
That's it.
Awesome. Now, Bob, I just want to ask you, obviously, with all of these games that are taking place, we need to give feedback to the referees, and that's the assessment process. And there was a lot of different ways that this assessment process kind of changed over time. But now that we have a professional league here in Canada, it's important that we have a very solid not only referee program, but the supporting programs to go with that assessment and instruction. And can you talk to us about this process?
Sure. With the inauguration of the league in 2019, we set out on an assessment checking program where we had an in-stadium assessor, and then they would submit their assessment to the checker. And the purpose of this was to make sure that terminology was correct, that law was correct, to make sure that we had some consistency in the message going to our referees, and making sure that there was consistency in the marking structure. We built on that following National Camp. We had a National Assessors Clinic, and there we built on introducing a new form, which I'll discuss a little bit later on, and also to make sure that everybody across the country who we were hoping to use was going to be on a similar footing, and then also recognizing that in a couple of areas of the country we were lacking human resources, and we were going to introduce on several occasions a video assessor program. So that was what we were thinking in March. By the time we get to August, this had morphed into keeping people involved, assessors involved in the assessment program. And so we set up that we would have Joe and myself as in-stadium observers, always responsible for the final assessment, of course, but we would then work with the assessors and they would do their video assessment. Initially, they had the opportunity to sit in on the pre-games by Zoom, and this was done on several occasions. We dropped that after a little while just because of the constraints on the time of the officials in working in all these 30-minute meetings. And then obviously we had the video assessor debrief, which was arranged between the referee and the assessor to make sure that the times were conducive to them. And that was limited to 30 minutes. In most cases, we did have one occasion, Mr. Branco, that it went a little longer. But apart from that, everything.
Hang on. Joe Branco took a little bit long. I can't believe it. Usually he's very concise and short. Joe, don't even write a message to me in the panelists. I know.
So, but that worked very, very well. As once again, as we found that there were constraints on everybody's time, we had enough data by game 22 that we decided that we would stop the video assessment program and give the referees more time to do the things that they had to do in a day, together with all of the recovery and making sure that they were fit for their games coming up.
Oh, and
so go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's excellent that not only the 2 assessors who were there, but there was an opportunity for other assessors within the program in the country to get some experience and exposure in working with these top level referees.
Yeah, we needed to keep the program strong, and these guys did a great job. I know there were some assessors who wanted, just like the referees wanted to go to the Island Games, there were assessors that wanted to be included in the 15 that we chose for the exercise. But everybody is a valuable member of our program, but we had to try and keep things as tight as possible. So this went on. Obviously, after game 22, the feedback came from Joe and myself after games in the normal fashion. And what we were trying to build on, the data that we got, the new form that we received, and Mr. Raymond's newfound love of pivot tables. I'm sure that we will have lots and lots of information that is coming from the data that we're collecting. And this all goes to that completing the circle, where you have instruction, performance, assessment, identification, and then you start with instruction again. So I think that we have a very, very sound base with good information to take us to the next level, when hopefully we'll be able to get together for another camp in spring of next year.
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean, even seeing this picture here of the referee sitting, watching this on a large screen TV as opposed to huddled around a laptop computer, right? Being able to look at assessors from across the country and do it virtually, but also to see clips of their games and analyze them that way. I think the technology aspect of this is going to add a great layer to the level of assessment that we're able to provide. And we know that the only way the referees get better is if the assessment process gets better. So I think that this is a huge positive for what's going on in the country right now with our referee development. So thank you, Bob, for that.
You're welcome.
Now, before we get into this, I don't, panelists, I don't see any questions that haven't been answered online. I don't have any to answer, so we're just going to keep going. If anybody does have a question that didn't get answered, or something that you want us to address, feel free to add it into the question and answer. But I'm going to go through the referees, and they're going to give me just a couple of lessons that they learned. I've asked them to talk about not only lessons they learned as part of the soccer experience, but maybe also a lesson that they learned as part of growth and development personally for themselves in this environment. So Carly, I'm going to start with you. If you can give me 2 of the lessons that you learned being part of the CPL Island Games.
Yeah, so my soccer related one is just gaining confidence around professional soccer. Having the opportunity to ref those few games really gave me a lot of confidence that I hope to carry forward into next season, whatever that looks like. And then my individual one is that for my own personal mental health, I know that I need to get out and not be stuck in a hotel doing the same thing all the time. I enjoy getting out and doing things, and that's something positive for me.
Excellent. Thanks, Carly. And I mean, that speaks to why you were the one organizing the outings, right? Because you knew that you needed it, or you were going to kill all these guys.
Yeah.
Jason, how about for you?
Yeah, a friend of mine told me he used to bring a referee bag in his car before, like when he would go to watch games, and I always laughed to say, well, like, why would you do that? But I guess what you could take from it is to always be ready. Opportunities come in in different ways in life and in refereeing especially, and things don't always follow the script. So for me, thinking about that and just always being ready and for the next challenge, just not for today, but for tomorrow. The second thing, coming into the tournament, I had a bit of a goal to like we obviously had. Sorry, I'll start again. Sorry, my second lesson from the tournament is kind of less is more. As a referee, as an assistant referee, you have to know when you're needed from the referee, but equally you need to know when your involvement isn't as helpful. So learning when to get involved and when to help the referee is probably the biggest takeaway from the tournament. And it's pretty easy when you have the assistant referees that we had at this tournament, some of the best in the country, to kind of get the experience and exposure from that.
Yeah, I mean, it helps you focus on the small details, right? And make sure that that they don't get overlooked, because those are the things that the referees need from you, right? And as an assistant referee, one of the hardest parts of your job is figuring out what the referee needs from you. And I'm sure in this environment, working so close together with different referees, that those little details and those little tricks you could learn from the other ARs was very helpful.
Definitely.
Who am I going to come to next? Sean Hornsby. Talk to me.
I think from a personal level, I learned that mental toughness is an important characteristic to have. I mean, that applies to refereeing, but also, in like your own personal life. But specifically in a tournament, like there were highs and there were also lows, and you have to be able to cope with adversity. And you can't let your last mistake be your next one. So, yeah, I think that was a good, the tournament really emphasized, the need for mental toughness. And then another one I think is the value of teamwork. Talk about like cohesion and like the strength of like the referee family that we have. I think that really helps people, get through the highs and lows of this tournament. We're a team on the field. We're also a team off the field. And like I learned stuff about these 16 people that I never thought like I would have learned.
Never wanted to know either. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Some of it I'm trying to forget, but it's a bit
all
tough.
Do without Phillips like karaoke system.
Yeah. So yeah, the ability, like teamwork is very important, and we all know that teamwork is important. But being in this tournament and in this atmosphere, I think really emphasized it. And like it's been 3 months I think since we came back, and like I still genuinely miss getting a text from Miriam at 6 a.m. saying we're wearing gray on the field and black shorts, and like, I don't know, like you miss the little things, right?
I'm sure if you asked her to still tell you what to wear every day to work, she would probably do that for you.
I don't know if I could trust her at this point though.
Awesome, thank you. Now, Phil, since I'm throwing a lot of shade at you, I'm gonna let you go next. Tell us what this experience has meant to you.
Absolutely. So personally, I think this is a theme that several people touched on this throughout the presentation, but it's just the fact that kind of being open and putting yourself out there with your teammates, like it is uncomfortable and it's kind of hard for you to go against when you make a mistake to want to talk to people about it, but everyone there's your teammate. Everyone wants you to get better, and you won't get better until you have difficult conversations with people. So one of the things I took away, that it's important to have hard conversations, and just, you have to admit you're wrong sometimes to get better. And I thought that was really good. From a soccer standpoint, one of the main takeaways is that as a referee, you really have to be kind of a cheerleader out there for your crew. You have to have a really good positive presence with your communication. So in the past, for me, it was kind of like, it's just business, just get the decision right. But I realized that wasn't the best approach, and you need to be positive, and kind of little things you say can go a long way, like good run over there, good flag, things like that really help your crew's energy, and I think it really helps everybody. So those are my takeaways.
That's awesome, Phil. Bob, what about for you? You had a little bit of a different role, but how did this play out for you?
Well, from my personal side was the training, which we've already talked about, but from a program standpoint, I am always blown away by the professionalism and just the awesome work ethic that these guys showed. And I honestly believe that our program is in really good stead for the pure and simple fact that I see it manifested in our Next Gen program. I see it manifested by participants in the provincial preparation programs. And it's not an easy life being a referee in this type of environment. It's something that they have to learn, because we hope that they'll go on to tournament after tournament. But they blow me away.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Michael, what about for you?
Yeah, so my personal one is really, we always have advice coming in, but I had to learn to really go out and actually use my colleagues here that are more experienced. They have a wealth of knowledge, and really I'd be doing myself a disservice to not use that. So going out of my way and actually asking them questions and getting feedback was really something that I don't normally do, but I found was really helpful. And now I think I'm going to try and put that in practice more. As for my more soccer related one, communication was a really big part here. I don't have a ton of experience at the pro level. I hope to continue it, but just really learning what needs to be communicated, when it needs to be communicated, and what some referees don't want some communication, right? So just learning how to communicate effectively was probably my biggest one there.
Yeah, and I mean, anybody who's been a referee learns that, you know, some of the best advice we can get is watching other people do their jobs and take some of the tricks and tips that they use and put them into our toolbox, right? And so I think, Michael, recognizing that as being a really important part of the process of development and is important, right? I think that's really great. Travis, what about for you?
Yeah, so for my soccer related one, it's similar to Michael's, I guess, but keep it simple was probably one of the most repeated phrases while we were
Isaac
on the
really
island.
likes that phrase, so he'll be beaming that you've used that now. Keep it simple.
So yeah, just the importance of good communication and learning to use the right or ask the right questions during a pregame, and finding the quickest way to relay information as possible. Every referee has their own sort of buzzwords, so finding what they were for each one is pretty key. As for personal, finding new ways to unwind. So usually at home, the ways to unwind would be, you know, go for a run or a workout, but you know, that's something we were doing every day already. So the social committee made it pretty simple. And since we were pretty much like a family, it was a lot easier on the island.
Awesome. Thank you. Usury.
Yes. So from a soccer perspective, for me, it was trying to create an atmosphere of teamwork, because we saw some incredible decisions from assistant referees and fourth officials in this tournament. And it's just trying to create this atmosphere where everyone feels empowered to make sure that they can step in, because you never know when you're going to need someone's help. And just to make sure that if it's not the 5th minute and you need them in the 95th minute, that they're still there for you. And it doesn't start when you blow the first whistle, or it doesn't start during your pregame. We had 40 days to work on it and 40 days to build that confidence level and trust in one another. And to me, that was a very big takeaway from this tournament. And on a personal level, it's to make sure I lock my door when Dave Barry is on video calls. I found that I was on more calls with his family than I would have liked. Other soccer calls that he took. I need to work on closing that latch and putting a deadbolt on my hotel room door to keep Dave out.
Yeah, not just in your hotel room, just in life in general, usually just find that latch. Stefan, how about for you?
So for me, managing the load of games, not just physically, but more so mentally, and just how to perform at a high level on the next one. So if I can use a cliche for that, it would be don't get too high on the highs, and more importantly, don't get too low on the lows. And also figuring out the balance, you know, being away from home for a long time, missing milestones like anniversaries and birthdays, and just finding strategies with somebody else on how to get through that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big lesson to learn. Dave Barry, you wanted us to talk quickly so you would have more airtime. So please share your insight for all of us.
Well, I've only got 20 minutes. Okay. No, so on a personal level, it was great to get to know, obviously, the referees at this tournament, but it was also interesting to get to know some of the players and coaches well. So I spoke to a couple of players. One was Daryl Fordyce of Valor, and also Tommy Wilden, the Calgary manager. It was interesting that even though we're at the tournament in different capacities, we share a lot of similarities. We were all away from our families and our children, which only myself and Pierre-Luc have children out of the 16 officials. So, we're all at this tournament, PEI, because we love football, but it was really brought it back home to me that we do have a life outside of that. Referees are people too, as it were.
What?
Then the other one I thought was, the opportunity to do professional games and be that ambassador. I mean, Bob spoke earlier about the Black Lives Matter, but also FC Edmonton during the tournament had heard that Chris Coy, their former captain, had passed away. And I had the opportunity to referee Chris when I first come onto the national list. And he passed away at the age of 37 from cancer with 3 children. So I think it was really interesting to get the perspective that, we love what we do. It's opportunity professional games, but really understanding that as match officials, we sometimes play a bigger role than just what you see on the field.
Awesome. Absolutely. And that's so true, right? We are the ambassadors for the game. And I think we can never lose sight of the professionalism and the importance that is. Just to finish on, I say lighter note, but there has been moments of lightness in the entire thing. But I'm curious about your favorite memory. So when you look back on the 40 plus days that you spent in this group of rock star / dysfunctional / I could go on and on. What do you take away as your favorite memory from the event? Michael, I'm going to go for you first.
Yeah, so probably when I think back, one of my favorite memories isn't a specific point, but more of every night after we were all done everything. Maybe not every night, but most nights there was a group of us that would just go sit out on the patio and unwind. Sometimes those discussions got interesting with PL and Liaz trying their hand at some psychoanalysis. And other times it was just us having a good time and talking about whatever came to mind. So yeah, that's my favorite memory.
Awesome. Bob, what about you?
I think it was finding out how sweet Joe Audi really is. I mean, he is an incredible person. And when I was talking before about work ethic and the rest of it, he is responsible for one of the initiatives on the vaccine production in Canada. So he was busy all the time. And his support of me and everybody else's support of me and allowing me to hone the few skills that I've got left in order to be able to move the program forward. It was just a fabulous event.
Yeah, but you always have a career as a goalkeeper, right? So even if the refereeing thing doesn't work out, then you can pivot. I think they're looking for goalkeepers next year.
Just as long as they shoot straight at me.
Carly, how about for you?
My favorite one was just getting to go to the beach with everyone and unwind and enjoy the beautiful scenery and not have to look at the same hotel and everything. So that was definitely my favorite.
Awesome. I'm sure it was also because you got to wear those socks. So I'm sure that's why it ranked right up there for you. Sean, how about for you?
Yeah.
I think one of my most memorable moments would be being part of Carly's crew for her first game.
Cool. Just full stop right there. That's it.
Yeah, it's easy. Top pick.
Awesome. Jason.
Yeah, I think it's hard to pick a single memory, but the Sunday evenings after the weekend games is something I really cherished. In our business, a lot of times it's difficult to connect on a personal level because you're often going to a game, rushing off to the next to go home or to the airport. And like at this tournament, you're able to connect with people. And the Sunday evenings was one of those examples. A lot of people in the pandemic, I mean, there's a lot of people are isolated from friends and family. So connections are more difficult. So I mean, for me, this tournament gave me a bit of light and the ability to connect with old friends, but also make new friends and have the time to do that. Because I don't think you always get that time in every season. So that was one thing I won't forget.
No, I think that's super cool. Thanks, Jason. Duich. See, I say it right.
Yes, well done. Yeah, like Michael said, it's hard to pick one moment, but I enjoyed the Uno Island portion of it. I thought it was a good bit of competitiveness. We had some fun battles and moments, and it was a bit of fun. So enjoyed that.
Well, and I see that there's been a few messages to us from different areas of the country ready for the next Uno challenge. So this might be something that just doesn't go away for some of you. Sorry. Travis, how about for you?
Yeah, so similar to Jason, the first social night we had was probably going to be mine. Everyone finally had the chance to breathe, and the first set of games were done. There's questionable karaoke and a lot of laughs. And for some reason, the hotel left some Nerf guns behind. And I remember all of us sitting around the table watching Miriam try to shoot a can off of Sean's head, maybe trying to prove that he's concussion proof now. I don't know.
Awesome. Thank you. Dave Barry.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, I've already spoken about, you know, doing professional games in this year with everything that's going on, but just the whole tournament and the importance of CPL. I mean, I've been, you know, fortunate to be on the national list now. This is my 11th season. And this is the first time we've had that professional league. It's always been one, maybe two clubs. You get your 4 or 5 appointments a season if you're lucky. So a pandemic couldn't have hit the league at the worst time. And we all need the league to be successful. And people tend to focus a lot on the coaches and the players' side, but we need that for the match officials. So just being part of that and the hope that we can, you know, weather this storm and get back to, you know, going out to, you know, different facilities next year and doing the league was a big part of my memory from this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think the success of this league, even in this environment, speaks to how well it's established itself, right? I think that that's a really important point. Thank you, Dave. Stefan, how about for you?
For me, it was just being with everybody, all the off-field activities we did, winding down the games like Uno, and another one we did, a few of us in the pool, we would just be in a circle of about 4 or 5 and just keep the ball up with our heads. And I still think my head is flat from it, but I think we managed about 12 or 13 in a row. And that was a ton of fun.
Awesome. And Yusuri, you get the last word.
Yeah, so I was actually quite torn about my favorite memory, because on the one hand, watching Philip and Pierre-Luc lose in such spectacular fashion in the finals of soccer tennis, it was quite fun. But really, I'm going to have to go with enjoying Cow's ice cream. I do have a sweet tooth, so I kind of enjoy anything chocolate and ice cream related. But also, it was kind of one of our rare connections with the local culture there. And so it was just nice to be able to get some Cow's ice cream. We got it almost once a week on Sunday nights, like some other people were talking about. And just to be able to sit back and enjoy some nice local ice cream and do our part to try to help in these times.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And I want to thank you, first of all, to all the panelists for the professional and performance and excellent representation you did of not only the National Referee Program, but the entire refereeing fraternity in our country. I have to commend you all for the way that you carried yourself both on and off the field. You definitely made us all proud. You're role models for all the referees in our country. And I think that the way that you performed in this event and the experiences that you have are going to really fare well for your careers going forward. And I'm really excited to see what comes from each of you next. So thank you for letting me be part of your story. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for your positivity and your patience and your grit and your ability to overcome. And thank you for the sacrifices that you make every day for our program to succeed. And just in closing, I need to say a thank you to Allstate, who was a sponsor of Canada Soccer's webinar and the Island Games and Life in the Bubble. I also want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank the presenting partner, Allstate, and their 1,000 agents who are proudly supporting Canadian soccer at every level. Thank you to all of the participants who signed in today for taking time away from your lives to listen to the stories of these amazing young referees. And thank you to Canada Soccer for allowing me to be part of this event. So have a great afternoon, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and good luck, stay safe, and hopefully we can see each other face to face very soon. Thank you, guys.